skin tight, and he remembered the cabin in Big Sur where he took Rose after they first knew about the baby, but before the diagnosis. There had been a fireplace, and they'd sat before it until nearly dawn, using what had been meant as a weekend supply of wood on their first night. His face had felt like this then. He tried to recall the name of the cabin they had stayed in. Bluebird? Bluebell? Blue Ridge? Blue something, for sure, but blue what? Blue Moon. The name painted just above the door had been Blue Moon, with a little star-accented teal crescent that Rose had rolled her eyes at. Are we supposed to think we're in fucking Connecticut, for Christ's sake? He'd said something in response, some joke about not cursing in front of the baby, but before he could remember what it was he'd said, his foot slipped in a great deal of someone's blood, drawing him back to the present and the flames here before him. The wiper blades on a Hummer H3, one of the few vehicles with intact glass this close to the blast, were beating furiously, cleaner fluid spraying, smearing blood, batting what looked like a gnarled bit of scalp and ear back and forth across the windshield, while the young woman inside wiped vomit from her chin and screamed into a Bluetooth headset. Looking at a man on the edge of the crater, his entire jawbone carried away by a piece of flying debris, Park only wondered now at the instinct that had made him take his weapon from the car rather than his first aid kit. It wasn't the first human bomb in Los Angeles, just the first one north of Exposition and west of the I-5. The sound of the detonation rolling across the L.A. basin and washing up against the hills had brought me out to my deck. One expects the occasional crack of gunfire coming from Hollywood on any given night, but the crump of high explosives in West Hollywood was a novelty. A sound inclined to make me ruminant, recalling as it did a pack of C4 wired to the ignition of a VC colonel's black Citroën in Hanoi, as well as other moments of my youth. Thus nostalgic, I came onto the deck in time to see a slab of the city framed by Santa Monica, Venice, Western, and Sepulveda wink into blackness. Looking immediately skyward, knowing from experience that my eyes would subtly adjust to the reduction in ground light, I watched the emergence of seldom-seen constellations. Under these usually veiled stars, the city burned. Only a small bit of it, yes, but one of the more expensive bits, a circumstance that would no doubt have serious repercussions. It's all well and good in the general course of things if Mad Swan Bloods and 8-tray gangster crips want to plant Claymore mines in Manchester Park, or for Avenues and Cypress Park to start launching RPGs across Eagle Rock Boulevard, but suicide bombers less than a mile from the Beverly Center would not be tolerated. Uncorking a second bottle of Clos de Pape, 2005, I rested secure in the knowledge that the National Guard would be shock-trooping South Central and East L.A. at first light. Nothing like a show of force to keep up the morale of the general citizenry in times of duress. The fact that the display would be utterly misdirected and only serve to brew greater discontent was beside the point. We had long passed the stage where the consequences of tactical armed response were weighed in advance. Anyone with the time and wherewithal to put a map on a wall and stick pins in it could see quite clearly what was happening. I had such a map, and said wherewithal, and many pins. If red pins are acts of violence committed by people traditionally profiled as potentially criminal, perpetrated against those who have not been so profiled, and yellow pins are acts of violence perpetrated between peoples traditionally so profiled, and blue pins indicate acts of violence carried out by uniformed and/or badged members of the soldiering and law enforcement professions upon peoples so profiled. One can clearly see patterns of tightly clustered yellow pins encircled by blue pins, concentrated to the far south, east, and north of the most prime Los Angeles real estate, which is in turn becoming pockmarked by random bursts of red pins. It is, on such a map, the vastness of the territory